Hi everyone, I'm Angie and welcome to Make It Monday. The holidays are just around the corner, so we'll be creating a holiday decor piece today. We'll be using an embroidery hoop, decorative papers, and some sparkle too. So we're going to get started. I'm going to set this off to the side. This is what we'll be making today. The first things we need to do are get our background paper on our hoop. So this paper here is what we need to glue onto our hoop. So this is a 6-inch embroidery hoop. This project can be done with a bigger hoop. You would just need bigger tree cutouts. So we're going to get some background paper. What we're using is an old piece of sheet music. Came out of this old sheet music book that we had in the library that had kind of had some damage to it, so we're repurposing that. So the first thing you want to do is cut your circle to go behind your embroidery hoop. So what I like to do is position the embroidery hoop on the sheet music, and you can kind of move it around to where you want it. You do want your screw fastener to be at the top, so you want to make sure that you kind of position this straight on your music page. So what I'm going to do is I kind of line it up so that I've got music running through with some at the top. I don't want to put it like this where I've got blank spots at the top and the bottom. I like to move it so that I've got music at the top and the blank spots are kind of in the middle between the staffs. So then I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to just trace around my hoop. So you're just going to trace all the way around the hoop. I'm going to go around it twice just to make sure that I've got a good pencil line that I can see. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see there is my pencil line. I'm just going to continue my circle at the top here. Okay, so once I have that drawn, I need to cut that out. But because I traced around the outside, that's going to make it just a tad bit bigger. So when I cut it, I want to cut inside the line. So I'm just going to cut, but I'm going to cut the pencil line off. And the trick to cutting circles is to actually turn your paper, not necessarily your scissors. So as you move around the circle, actually turn your paper, not your scissors. That actually makes a much cleaner cut than actually moving your scissors. So we're just going to keep cutting until we get this all cut out. Continue to go around. All right, just about there. Get that excess out of the way here. Okay, let's take our scrap paper. Just going to slide that down there. Okay, so now we have our circle cut for our embroidery hoop. So the next thing we want to do is we want to glue this to the back of the hoop. So I am going to take a white craft glue. Just going to get this down into the tip here. And I am going to put glue, and I don't want to get it too thick because I don't want it squeezing out too much. We're just going to put some glue on the back of our embroidery hoop. And I'm working just on top of a piece of wax paper just to protect my surface in case I got glue that squeezes out. So any type of white craft tacky glue. The reason I don't use a glue gun for this is I think the glue in a glue gun gets too bulky, where this will flatten out for me. The other thing is it also gives me some wiggle room. Okay, so again, I want to make sure that my pattern is, so I put the glue on the embroidery hoop, and then I turn around and I layer this on top of my circle of music so that I have time, I have some wiggle room to line it up. And you can flip it over to the back and just kind of make sure that, okay. All right, so I've got a little bit of glue that's stuck to the inside there. If you can see that just from my wiggling it around, there's some glue in there. It should dry clear, but I still like to take a paper towel and just kind of go along the inside, just a scrap piece of paper towel. You don't need a very big piece. And I'm just going to wipe along the inside there and take off any excess glue that is showing in there. I'm going to wipe it on that side, then I'm going to pick it up again just to make sure that I've got, and if you've got any like oozing out from the back, go ahead and wipe that as well. Okay, so we've got our paper glued on there. I've checked the back. I'm going to fold this because I've got glue kind of stuck inside there. Then I'm going to take and put something heavy on top of this. So I'm going to just set this book on top of this, and I'm going to let it dry. So we're going to let that dry, and then we'll be back to work on the next pieces. All right, we are going to start our next step in our project here. I've set my hoop aside to dry with the book on top of it, and while that's drying, we're going to work on our trees. So these trees were just cut out of decorative scrapbook paper. You can use any type of a little bit heavier weight paper to make your trees out of. Now I used a flat die to cut these with the die cutting machine. This is what the dies look like. You can also just cut them by hand. All you're basically doing is cutting a long triangle shape. So don't feel like you have to have a die to do this project. You can just make a pattern, trace around it, and then just hand cut your trees out. So we are going to actually layer the tree onto 2 pieces of white paper. And the reason we're going to do that is because when you layer all these together, it becomes very thick and almost like a chipboard. It's a very cheap way to layer up and make a thicker piece that will hold up. So we're going to glue these together. So I like to put some glue in a fine tip bottle like this. You don't have to do that. This is just my preference. So all I'm going to do, I like the fine tip bottle because it gives me a little bit more control, that I don't get so much glue, too much glue that I can't deal with it. So I'm just putting dots of glue all over the piece. And again, I like to use white glue because it gives me some wiggle room. So I'm just going to lay that on top of the previous one. I'm going to line it all up. And then I like to put something heavy on top of it. I have just a clear acrylic block here that I'm just going to set on top of it. And that just kind of holds it together while the glue is drying. So I'm going to do the next step with the next large set of trees. So again, just putting dots of glue. Like I said, you don't have to do it all the way. You could use a glue stick. I just don't know if you'll have as much wiggle room with that. before you put your pieces together. Like I said, I like to use liquid glue, liquid craft glue in a fine tip bottle like that. Okay, so there is my next one. I'm going to just move this one out and put that one underneath. And then I'm going to take the ones for my smaller tree and we're going to glue those together as well. So again, just dots of glue. I kind of like to put it all around the outer edge so I make sure that outer edge is sealed up pretty well. Gonna lay that on top and just pick it up. And like I said, I just kind of move it with my fingers to make sure that it's all adhered really well. I'll slide that out and flip that on under. And then once I've got the two white ones glued together, then I can go ahead and glue my pattern paper on top. So again, we'll just whoop. And if you get too big a dot, just kind of spread it out there. And it's kind of fun to choose your papers. I kind of just pulled 3 papers that I thought worked well together. You could use bits of old wallpaper, even just brown paper bag or something that you decorate, or a piece of a gift sack or something for your pieces. Think outside the box. There's lots of fun paper out there that you can get for rather inexpensively. And it doesn't take much paper to do these. You only need a small triangle. So, I mean, look at your paper scraps around the house, or maybe bits of a greeting card. Old Christmas greeting cards would be really pretty for that. Whoop, let's see, I need this one. So, yeah, old greeting cards, you could probably find some really fun patterns that you could pull from an old greeting card and just cut them up. So there are a lot of fun ways to do this without purchasing much at all. So this white paper that I'm using is a cardstock weight paper, so it's 80 pounds as far as paper weight goes. Paper, the higher the number, the thicker the paper. So an 80-pound paper, if you think of your typing paper that you use like in your computer printer and stuff, that's about 20 pounds or 25 pounds depending. So you want to make sure that would not be heavy enough to do this. You do need a cardstock weight in order to layer these up. Alright, so we have one more tree to glue, and that's our small one. And I also tried to vary the colors. So I kind of stuck with like a red, a green, and then a neutral color. You could do this in blues. You could do it in all shades of green. It really is your own preference as far as what do you want to use. Okay, one more tree. And glue that down. And then I'm just going to slide that under for a little bit. Okay, the next thing I want to do is talk about the trunks. Basically, I have a bunch of scrap cardstock around my house, and this is just different shades of brown cardstock that are cut into rectangles. It is the perfect way for a tree trunk. So all we're going to do for the tree trunk is we're just going to glue that rectangle onto the back of our trees. So while those two are still drying, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put some dabs of glue up at the top. And I don't want the trunk to stick out too far, but I wanted enough space for that to glue on there. And all I'm going to do is kind of eyeball this and press that down. So there we've got our trunk on there. I'm going to stick that under there, let that dry a little bit. We'll take this one and glue the trunk on here. All right. I'm going to just kind of center that on the bottom. Press that in place. I'll just tuck that under that corner. And then this last lighter color, and I chose a lighter color for this because of the lighter colors of the stars on the tree paper that I had chosen. All right, put my cap on my glue. And I'm going to line this up right on the bottom there. The grid on my mat here actually kind of helps me. Helps me center that. Okay, so we have our trees all ready to go. The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to let those dry just a little bit, and we're going to work on our snowflakes yet. So I'm going to clean up this a little bit, and I'll be back and we'll work on our snowflakes. All right, we are ready to work on our snowflakes. So the snowflakes are a die cut snowflake. You can sometimes find these purchased just already cut for you. There's also sequence snowflakes or button snowflakes that you sometimes can find in the craft store. So these again are just die cuts, and we are going to add some glitter glue. So the glitter glue that I'm using is called Diamond Stickles. Usually you can find this in any craft store. And what I like to do is I like to actually paint it on. It comes out really thick like that. It's meant to be a dimensional paste, but I actually prefer it to not be quite so thick on the snowflakes. So I'm just going to use a paintbrush. I've gotten my paintbrush just a little bit wet, and all I'm going to do is pick up the glitter glue, and I'm actually going to paint it on the snowflakes. It kind of spreads the sparkle out a little bit so that you're not getting big globs of it. So the one key thing is make sure you put your paintbrush in water when you're done. This is a glue. If it dries on your paintbrush, it will wreck your paintbrush. So you just want to, like I said, just paint it on your snowflakes. The other thing you could do if you don't have glitter glue is you can paint your snowflakes with just regular white craft glue. And if you have loose glitter, you can just add loose glitter to the glue and it'll stick. I would use a fine glitter. I don't think you want to use a real chunky glitter, especially if you're using like a fine die cut snowflake. But that is another option that you could use to add glitter to your snowflakes. I need just a little bit more glitter glue here. And I've chosen some different sizes of snowflakes. Usually I use one bigger snowflake like this, and then a couple medium-sized snowflakes, and then a couple real small snowflakes work really well. And again, I'm just working on top of wax paper here so that I don't get glitter glue all over everything. And once this dries, it does not flake off. That's kind of the one nice thing about using glitter glue, is it's going to stay on your snowflakes. And I have just this little tiny guy here left to paint. Okay, so then you just set that aside to dry. I'm going to put my paintbrush in water. I'm going to move this out of the way. The other thing is you want to pick up, especially if you're using the glue, pick up your snowflakes and kind of move them so they're not setting right in where you painted them. Otherwise they might just stick right down to the paper there. So I just use the tweezers and pick them up and just kind of move them so that they dry in a different spot. Okay, we are going to let those snowflakes dry, and then we're going to actually start putting our piece together. So I'll be back. Okay, welcome back. we are now ready to start putting our piece together. So our frame is dry with our paper on the back. We've got our trees ready and our snowflakes are over here. So if you'll notice on the sample, there is some dimension to these trees. And how we're getting that is we are using foam tape. So this is a double-sided foam tape. I have one that's thicker and one that's thinner. And that's how we're going to get the dimension on our trees. So the thinner foam tape, which is a little bit lighter in color, is what we're going to use on our base tree. So that's the tree that's going to be way in the background. So for this sample, I put the main tree back here, then a tree off to the left, and then this small tree is actually layered on top, but the edge of it is actually glued to the edge of the frame. So I'm going to kind of do the same configuration. Is I want my red tree to go in the back. I'm going to take my green tree and position it, and actually this is where the staff paper actually comes in nice because it's got lines on it. So I am going to line my green tree up with the very bottom line on my music there. And then my little other tree is going to go over here with the edge of it kind of on the frame. So we're going to start with our red tree, and we're going to take and cut some foam tape, and we're going to put it on the back. So I like to work kind of in pieces. It doesn't have to cover everything completely, but you want it to go along the edges so that you have a nice base for it to push down on. So I'm going to put a small piece there. And then I'm actually going to take a piece and I'm going to cut it in half and put that kind of along this side here. And you want to make sure, because that was sticking out over the edge a little bit, you want to make sure that you don't have any foam tape sticking out over the edge of your piece. So I'll put another piece there, kind of butted up against that. I'm going to take a really tiny piece and put it way up here in the tip. And then I have a little bit of an extra piece, so I'm going to put it right there in the middle. So that's what the foam tape should kind of look like on the back of your piece. And it's double-sided, so then you just peel off the backing. And then you're just going to stick it down to your project. Now, if you want to be able to have a little wiggle room, because once this sticks, it sticks, you can always put a little bit of liquid glue on the back side of your foam tape, and then it allows you a little bit of wiggle room. I am going to just go for it. So the other thing to keep in mind when you're putting this base tree on is you are going to have a star that's going to go on the top of this tree. So make sure that you don't have your tree so far up that you don't have room to put your star on there. So I'm going to kind of put, let me turn this around a little bit. I'm not going to stick it down yet, but I'm going to kind of put the corner of my tree up against this edge and then kind of up, but I don't want it down as far as this tree is going to go. So I'm going to turn that back around and I'm going to put it, and again, those lines on the paper actually help so that I know that I've got this kind of on here straight. And if you don't push down hard, you can wiggle this a little bit. And once you've got it where you want it, then push it down. And then that gives your tree some dimension behind it. All right, so we're going to now move to our green tree. So the thing about the green tree is it's actually going to overlap this tree some. So where it overlaps, we only want one single piece of foam tape. But on this edge, we're going to actually double our foam tape up. And this will hopefully make sense in just a minute here. So I'm going to get a piece of this foam tape, which is really wide. And I've had this for a little while, but it still is sticky and it still works just fine. So I'm going to actually cut this into smaller strips because it's easier to deal with. Okay, so when you think about flipping your tree over, this is the side that's going to overlap that. So we only want one layer of foam tape there. So on this edge, I'm going to put just a single layer of foam tape because that's going to go on top of that. But this side, I need to put 2 layers of foam tape. So on this side, actually I'm going to cut a couple, let's see, I had a couple small pieces on here. So I'm going to I had another small piece there. Okay, so on this side we're going to double up our foam tape. So I'm going to again cut this into strips because it's a little too wide to just use straight as is. So to double up your foam tape, you're just going to pull the backing off, and then you're just going to place another piece of foam tape right on top of it. And then I need to check my trunk. So when I lay this on there, you'll see this piece is down, but this piece is also down. So my trunk area does not overlap that other piece. So that should also need 2 layers of foam tape. So what I'm going to do is actually cut that and just layer it right on top of the other one. I need to cut it a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to double up on the bottom where my tree trunk is. And then I'm going to set that on there just to make sure that I'm not interfering with where that's going to go. And that looks like it's going to be okay. And so I need to put, let's see, need to put a double layer up here on top as well. And always kind of test it out. You can peel some of the foam tape off if you need to. Just be super careful if you do that so that it doesn't totally rip your paper down. Okay, so where it's overlapped this tree, I just have 1 layer, and where on this side I have 2 layers. Now my tip there is a little bit flimsy, so I'm going to take a couple small pieces. And again, that top piece does not overlap anything, so I need to put 2 layers there. So I'm going to just peel that off. I'm going to take another small piece. And again, make sure it's small enough that it doesn't show out the sides. And put that on there. I'm going to set that extra piece aside. Okay, so it's solid all the way across there, which is what you want. So now I can take and pull my foam tape off and position it. So I'm just going to kind of lay my white tree here so I make sure that I've still got room for that. So I'm just kind of looking at my paper so I kind of know what I'm lined up with. And then I'm going to peel the backing off all of this foam tape, and I'm going to stick this next layer down. Okay. All right, so we're going to position this, and I want this one down farther. And it doesn't have to go all the way to the bottom because we are going to add that little bit of fiberfill in there for the snow. So again, I'm going to kind of use the lines to line that up and place that tree down. So that tree is all secure. So now we have dimension. This tree is in the back, this is in the foreground. So now we need this tree to go on. Now this tree, and I need to kind of look at this, is again going to be double layered except for where it overlaps this tree. So it's just this corner that's going to need one layer of foam tape, the rest is going to need a double layer again. So again, make sure when you're putting your foam tape on, because you're looking at the back of it, make sure that your double layer of foam tape is going on the right side when you look at the back of it, because when you flip it over, that right side then becomes the left side and it's going to go here. So keep that in mind when you're putting your foam tape on. All right, so now I just said that, now I got to pay attention to where I'm putting this. Okay, so this is my side that needs the double layer of foam tape. So again, I'm going to use my skinny little strip there. I'm going to peel that backing off, and I'm going to put this there. And I might have just goofed that up. Nope. Yep, I did. Because we're going to glue that edge to the frame, I need this to be a little bit smaller. So I just peeled it up a little bit and trimmed it with my scissors. I'm just going to put that backing back on there because I'll use that in another spot. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're putting your foam tape on, that the edges of this are going to get glued to the frame. Okay, so that this bottom corner and this corner here are the ones that you don't want as much foam tape on. Okay, and so the tip of my tree, I'm actually going to stick this right in the middle. I can stick that piece of backing back on there. And then I need to cut just a little bit more foam tape. I'm just going to cut a small piece off of here. And again, I'm going to cut it into strips. All right, so let's see. We've got foam tape there. I need just a single layer of foam tape in this bottom corner. So I'm going to put that on there. And I'm going to test it out again just to make sure that everything is going to go where I want it to. So I've got my little piece of, so I need just a little bit of double foam tape kind of in this area. So what I'm going to do is cut a small piece and just slide it in there. And again, I want to make sure that it's not going to interfere. Yep, that should be good. So it's really good to test it out before you stick everything, all the foam tape on. Just test it to make sure that it's going to go where you want it to. Okay, layer that up. All right. So that's foam taped there. And I'm kind of just checking to make sure it's secure all the way. And I think what I'm going to do is put one little thin layer of foam tape right there because it overlaps. It'll just secure my trunk a little bit better. Yep, everything feels solid. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, is for everything to feel solid underneath there, that I don't have any wobbly points. Okay, so we're going to get rid of those extra pieces of foam tape over here. And we're ready to stick our third tree down. So I'm going to peel the back off. And remember, we're going to glue this to the side of our frame, which will also help stabilize this small tree. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue in this corner and on the corner of my stem there. And I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to place it where I want it, and I want a little bit of that red to show around it, and I want it to come up just a little bit from the base of that tree. And I'm kind of just eyeballing this, and then I'm going to press it in place. And then I'm going to stick my acrylic block just on here to let that glue dry. Okay, so we've got our trees on there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some paint spatter to add snow to the trees and to the background. And I like to do that paint spatter before I put my stars on my trees because I don't always want the spatter on my stars. So we're going to spatter next. So I'm going to set up and get ready for that, and we'll be back. Okay everyone, we're all set to spatter. So I have my spatter box here. This is what I use when I'm spattering things so I don't end up with paint everywhere. So what I've done is I've taken some acrylic paint and I've added some water to it. I want it to be fairly fluid, so think like a thick cream is about the consistency you're going for. You want it to be liquid enough that you can spatter it. So with spatters, the bigger the brush, the bigger the spatter. So I'm using a fairly small brush. This is a number 4 round. And I am just going to take and get some paint on there, and then I'm going to just tap it with my finger. And if you're worried about the first spatters, sometimes you can tap off. Whoop, I should do it on this side so I'm not in the way. Tap off to the side, because usually the first spatters are the biggest. And you're just going to work around your background to add some spatters. I need just a little bit more water in here. Just going to get a little bit more water on my brush. I'm going to tap off. And you can do as much of this or as little of this as you want. So just tap with your paintbrush and kind of just move around. Okay. That is pretty much what I want to spatter with. So we're going to let that dry, and then we'll come back and we're going to work on our frame a little bit and adding our snowflakes. Okay, we are ready to move on to our frame. So if you'll notice on the sample, I've taken white paint and just kind of dabbed it around the frame, just to give it some interest instead of it just being plain brown. So I still have my watered down paint here that I used for the spatters. And all I'm going to do is apply this with my finger. So I'm just getting some paint on my finger and I'm kind of dabbing it off. And I'm just going to kind of dab it on the frame. I don't want it to be super thick. I just want it to give some interest to the frame. So kind of turn your finger different ways. And you can always add more, but you can't take it away. So I try not to get it to look too much like a fingerprint. And that's why I kind of dab it off of my finger some. You know, and there's also a few paint spatters on your frame. So I'm just gradually turning this, and this will dry fairly quickly too because you've got just a thin layer of paint on there. But it does just add some interest to the frame. So now I'm going to just pick it up and hold it by the sides, and I'm going to do the same thing kind of around the outside edge. And if I get it a little bit too thick, then I'm just going to kind of push it around with my finger. Hopefully I've got this in the frame good so you can kind of see it. And sometimes I'll just take my other finger. So this is a messy thing, but that's okay. It's kind of fun to play with paint. So I'm just going to continue to go around my frame. And I'm not going to do like the inside area where the trees are. It's just too hard to get in there with your finger. I would have had to, if you wanted to do something like that, you would have to do it right at the beginning before you put your paper on the back. It's not to say it can't be done. It's just a matter of you have to do it in the right order. So I'm just gonna, again, I'm just kind of dabbing. And if you get some on the metal part, that's fine too. You can do a little bit on the edges if you want. It's a little hard to get way in there, but you certainly can put a little bit on the edges. So you're just going to do this until you've got it the way you want it. Just a little bit more over here, some whiter spots. Okay. All right, so I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to get my fingers wet here a little bit and just wipe them off. And then we're going to start adding our snowflakes and everything to the inside here. So I just clean my fingers off with a little bit of water and a paper towel. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to glue our snowflakes in place. So we've got them all set, and we're just going to position them around. Let's see, I think I want the smaller one at the top here. I'm going to put this one here. I'm going to move that kind of off. And then my real small ones are going to go over here on the left side because there's not quite as much room, and I've got just this little tiny guy here. Okay. All right, so I've kind of got them where I want them. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a dot of glue just in the center of the snowflake. I don't want to glue everything down flat. I want it to feel like those snowflakes have a little bit of movement. So the way to do that is to leave this part of the snowflake without any glue on it. So I'm just going to put a dot of glue in the center of my snowflake and then position that where I want it. And that's kind of why I leave the other snowflakes in place, just so that I can get my position right. So that's why I kind of lay them out first. All right, so I'm going to put that one there. Put this one kind of up here at the top. I'm going to use my tweezers for this little tiny guy because he's a little hard to pick up and put glue on with my fingers. But tweezers is a really good crafting tool. Just allows you to deal with little tiny things. And same with this one. I'm going to pick that up and just put glue in the center of that. Whoop! Good thing that landed with the glue side up. All right, put that right in there. Okay, so I've got my snowflakes on. I'm also going to add my stars to the trees. So to add the stars, I just put a little dot of glue at the top of the tree. And then I'm going to pick up one of my stars and just add it to the top. And it's sometimes fun to put those at a little bit of an angle. I've got a little bit of extra glue there. I'm just going to pick that up with my tweezers. Again, the glue dries clear, but I just don't want, too big a glob there. In fact, I'll just slide my star down just a little bit to cover that. There we go. Okay. Got a little bit of excess glue dripping out there. I'm going to just take that off. And again, put some glue on the tip of my tree. Take my star. And I kind of move the stars at a little bit of an angle just to give them more interest than just having them straight on the tree. Straight up and down. And a little bit of glue for this one. And then I'm going to add that onto that little tree. Okay, so I've got my stars glued in place. And then the other thing that we're going to add is some gems to the center of the snowflakes. So these are self-adhesive gems. You can use any kind of gems you want. Gems to be glued on, gems to, just straight gems. These, like I said, just happen to have an adhesive back to them. And there's like adhesive that runs between them. So what I'm doing is just cutting them apart so I don't have that. And so I just need 5 of these little things. And sometimes a straight pin is what works best to put these on. So here I've got just an old corsage pin. And you just pick that gem right up off the backing. And I put it on the tip of my, hopefully you can see that, put it on the tip of my pin. And then I'm just going to set that in the center of my snowflake and just push it down. So let's see, I've got another one here. Whoop. Sometimes they get away from you. All right, we'll get that one and we'll put it right in the center of this snowflake. These I kind of left attached to the backing. Just get that in the center. And just push it down. Get this little guy over here. The other thing I forgot to mention, and this is just a personal preference thing, if you want to add sparkle to your frame, which I did do that on the sample, you can take glitter glue and then just dab it around your frame. I don't know if you can see the sparkle on camera very well, but all I did is take the glitter glue. When I did the white, you also can just dip your finger in some glitter glue and then just tap that glitter on there. This one I wanted to be a little bit more rustic, so I decided to not put glitter glue on. Whoop, I need to cut in between that. Decided not to put glitter glue on the frame for this particular one. Whoop. See these little gems, they fly everywhere. Okay, we got one more of these to put on. Okay, the other thing I added to the background of this one is I have these little silver confetti stars. So I added just a couple of those in different spots around the frame. So to do these, the best way to do it is to put your glue on your paper and then add the star to it. So I'm just going to put a couple little stars out on my paper there. And I have what they call a jewel picker. It's like a point with a sticky end on it, and that's going to actually help me pick those up. Okay, I'm going to wipe off the tip of my glue here and decide where I want these stars. I'm going to put one there, and then I'll just pick this up and place that right on the glue. And this just adds, again, another little bit of sparkle. I don't put too many. I like to work in odd numbers. I think it looks better. So I'll probably end up doing 5 stars on here. And we'll put a couple, put one down here. Let's see, where do I want that? I got too much glue oozing out there. Just gonna wipe the tip off. Put one there. Let's see. I think I'll maybe put one right in here. Okay, so we've got our silver stars in place. And then two more things to do. So because there's a little bit of a gap here, we are going to take, this is just fiberfill. It was some Christmas fiberfill that actually had sparkles in it. They kind of fall off though. So what we're going to do is just take a little bit of that fiberfill and just kind of tuck it in here at the bottom Just going to kind of stretch it so that it fits underneath there. And you don't need much of this, just a little bit put down at the bottom just to mimic some snow. So what I do is I kind of stretch it out so that it fits where I want it. And then I'm going to go back and just kind of glue it in place with some liquid glue. Just trying to see if I think I need more than what I have here. Nope, I actually think that'll work pretty good. So then I'm going to again take my glue, which, there it is. I'm just going to add some dots of glue down in here, just along this base. And that's just going to kind of hold that fiberfill in place. It stays pretty good. So I'm going to kind of tuck that under that white tree. Use my pencil to kind of push it under there a little bit. And then I'm going to just kind of tuck it around that stem and just kind of fade it up. I need a little bit of glue up here to just hold that end. Like I said, you don't need much, but it's just enough to add that soft touch at the bottom of this. And just kind of make sure you push that into the glue so that it fits, it's snug down in there, so at least part of it is being held. So I'm just going to take my tweezers and just kind of make sure that I've got it pushed down. And I've kind of got it just a little bit over that brown stem for the green tree. So we're just going to kind of push that in. Okay, a little bit of technical difficulty. My battery ran out of my camera. So back to where I left off. We have our fiberfill on there. The fun thing to do is to add just a little bit of glitter glue to that fiberfill. We're going to add a little bit of sparkle to our snow. So all I'm going to do is squeeze a little bit of glitter glue out onto my paper there. And then I'm going to just take with my finger and I'm going to just lightly dab onto the fiberfill. And it's just going to add just a touch of sparkle. Sometimes you have to rub it just a little bit to get that off your finger and to stick to the fiberfill. But it adds just a tiny hint of glitter to that. That will give it just a touch of shine. And I don't know if you can see that on the camera. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Like I said, I always start with less because I always feel like I can add, but I can't take it away once I've got it there. So, and I kind of brush it back and forth to catch the fibers on the fiberfill. So just a little bit here and there. That looks like it'll be good. Okay, the last thing we need to do is to add our bow to the top. So I'll have different colored ribbons that everybody can use. So when you pick up your kit, you'll be able to pick out what color of ribbon you want based on what color your trees are. For this particular one, I chose this snowflake ribbon with, this rustic snowflake ribbon. We'll just call it that. Okay. So to attach that, we're just going to attach it with a glue gun. So hopefully my glue gun is heated up here enough. I'm just going to test. Yep, looks like I've got that. So I have a bow maker. I'll have bows tied for those of you who are picking up kits, and then you can just choose which color bow you want. Just going to put a touch of hot glue on the back side of your bow, and your bow is going to set right on top of that screw fixture, and then that just kind of hides that screw fixture. So once it's on there, you can kind of fluff up your bow, and I already trimmed the edges of this, but I'll leave those longer for when you pick them up and you guys can trim. So that is our project for today. I hope everybody enjoyed that. We are taking December off. Everybody's holiday schedule is really busy, so there will not be a Make It Monday in December, but we will be back again in January. We are closed Martin Luther King Day, which is normally the third Monday when we'll do it. We will probably push it back to the last Monday in January. So everybody have a happy holiday season, and we will see you again in January. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.